So good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce Jade Abbott, who is our speaker today. She's going to speak with us about her experience and journey as a woman in tech. At BBD, we employ the best suited person for the job, regardless of gender, race, or status, and believe that our employment process is fair and equal. So we acknowledge and represent all people, not just women. But with Women's Month, it's an opportunity for us to spotlight and celebrate our women. We're also cognizant of the fact that women have been previously disadvantaged in the workspace and really strive for that not to be the case at BBD, as I'm sure you'll all agree. Jade has an MCSC Computer Science degree from the University of Pretoria and works as a software engineer across Africa in many fields, from fintech to NGOs, which I'm sure we're going to hear lots about, her passion projects, to startups. She's the machine learning lead at Retro Rabbit in South Africa, where she trains and deploys deep learning systems. When Jade isn't doing the IT thing, she enjoys playing bass for a band, rock climbing, and more recently, snowboarding. Jade will chat to us for about 15 minutes, and then we'll open up the floor to everybody's Q&As, and we'll cut off after half an hour. So Jade, it's over to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Taryn, for the intro. It's wonderful to be here. Particularly where I am, I'm actually in Lesotho, so I'm going to show you some snow, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so it was completely snowed in for a couple of days ago.
So you're skiing?
Snowboarding. This is what I said.
Okay.
This is my most recent thing. Okay, sorry. I have to figure out. I've got all these weird laptop stands that fall apart when I move things. So yes, I've been learning to snowboard. Yesterday, I managed to do the proper turn down the mountain, which was really exciting. So I was trying to figure out which part I should focus on. So I've got a lot of thoughts. When I do a talk like this, I really prefer to just kind of have a couple of talking points and just talk around that. And I'd really like to encourage everyone to sort of ask questions, or we can kind of go into more detail like that. So my journey, I'll probably start a little bit with my journey into tech and where that's gone, where I find myself, how I found myself where I am now. And then I might do some self-reflections on how that went and what were kind of key moments and key struggles that enabled or needed that process. So I got into technology from a very young age. My mother before she had me, was a software developer, so I always had her as kind of someone to look up to in that space. I always thought it was something, being in tech was something that a woman could do. And then me and my dad were really close. He was really into computers, so he gave me a computer when I was very young. We watched a lot of sci-fi together, and that kind of spurred this passion for technology, and particularly for artificial intelligence. So for me, I really wanted to basically build a robot friend. That was what I wanted to do as a kid. I didn't really know how that was going to happen, but I wanted to build a robot friend. And so as soon as I could get into programming, I did. So I was lucky enough to be in a school where they offered computer science, started coding there, loved it, was like, cool, this is what I'm going to study, went to Tux, did that. So in terms of getting into tech, I would say I had a very straightforward. It was something that I knew from very young. I think I was quite lucky to be surrounded by, having mentors and having people I could look up to in my family who enabled that. And at some stage, I decided, I wanted to continue research. I wanted to continue research in AI and started doing a master's. And that didn't go quite as planned. I think I worked for it a year doing that, and I ended up hating it. I hated working by myself. I was like, why did I study this? I studied this so I could build things, not so I could, sit and research things that didn't matter. And so I started working at Retro Rabbit back then. And I loved it, absolutely loved it. And what I loved about it was the thing that you don't get from research, which is research has a long turnaround time and seeing a response. But obviously in software, you build something, you can see it works. And I remember the first system I deployed was, I think it was for an election. It was like a violence monitoring system for the elections. Now South Africa doesn't really have that as a problem, so this was a pilot in South Africa to be built for Kenya, where they've got a huge electoral violence problem. And I remember, that deadline was not going to move. I remember working nights just to get it running, and then as it hit, it was like, cool, 30,000 people on the platform. So that was a really cool feeling. And I found that was, for me, more inspiring than sitting and doing research. So from there, I was working as a software engineer, very much like across the board in terms of platform, in terms of, I think I started in PHP, and the next month I was in Python, and the next month I had to learn, C#. And, it was really, really exciting. I was quite grateful for that opportunity. I got the opportunity to work in Kenya for 7 months on a project there. But still inside of me, I still had this, like, I want to, build a robot friend. And I thought, studying robotics would have helped me that, but with my master's, it was clear that it did not. And we got a project where there was, they had a need for some natural language processing, or they thought they might. And at that point, I think I just went, put me on that. I want that project. Give me that one. Like, this is the opportunity for me to learn all this stuff. And I had to go and learn a fair amount of stuff because that field moves very fast. So in the 5 years I've been working in industry, basically the entire field of AI had changed. It had, they had this giant race. We now had these massive machine learning models, and like everything was moving super fast. So I had to try and catch up while doing this. And through this process, met a lot of wonderful people, started attending conferences again. It was very strange. I ran away from research, and then suddenly I found myself in research again with kind of found my space, I guess, in natural language processing. What I realized that I really enjoyed about this robot friend idea is I wanted to program the brain. I didn't care about the robot. I wanted to be able to, build up conversation. That was the thing that mattered. Language was the thing that really mattered. Got involved with an amazing group. If anyone's interested in machine learning, I really recommend getting involved with the deep learning Indaba. And there I met a couple of people, and we started doing research for fun, right? So, we'd meet up after work, we'd go have a beer, and we'd read papers together. It's just like the nerdiest, the nerdiest outing ever. But it was super fun. So we'd get together, we'd read papers, we'd write papers. And that I really enjoyed. It was suddenly this collaborative thing. So in addition to doing kind of my day job of trying to figure out how to do machine learning in production, which at the time there was nothing, like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, it was really, really difficult to get anything out. So while doing that during my day job, I was now doing something else I was passionate about in the evening, which was doing this research with a friend of mine. And that's allowed us to kind of travel to different parts of the world, go to different conferences. And it's from there that me and my co-author at the time, Laura, we co-founded an initiative called Masakani, which is a kind of open, collaborative, grassroots research initiative for focusing on this natural language processing for African languages, because the AI space is very much dominated by English. It's very much dominated by kind of Western culture and Western ideals and Western data even. And so this was a big push to say we need to, in order for technology to accept Africa, we need to be, it needs to be better supported. The languages need to be better supported by technology. So that's sort of where I am, is that I've come all this way of playing around, and I really enjoy projects where I don't know what's going on and I have to figure it out. So it's been a lot of that. And so that's sort of the journey. So I'm going to take a moment to self-reflect on, it sounds all lovely and fluffy, but the kind of really emotional part I want to come back to is sort of myself as a female in this space, in a very male-dominated space. And I think if I look back, one of the biggest changes, one of the earliest things I remember is I used to, I think as a woman in the space, as a kid, I sort of looked around at the way women were portrayed in media, the way women were, portrayed as people who weren't technical and they like fashion. I actually found myself rejecting my femininity a lot. So I became quite a tomboy, not because that necessarily was who I am. I rejected it because I didn't see, my passion for computing and my passion for science reflected in the narrative of being a woman, because that was not what the world was presenting at the time. I think that's significantly changed now, but at the time there wasn't, besides my mother, there were very few women in the space. So kind of, I think I changed myself a little bit. I think I dressed a certain way. I think I spoke a certain way. I think I, try to be one of the guys. And as I had a lot of, I think if you speak to a lot of women in this space and they'll be like, oh yeah, I had a lot of male friends. And I think I had a lot of male friends because I had rejected this view of femininity that had been presented to me. And so let me just quickly look at some of my notes where I wanted to take this. And so throughout this process, it's really been, what's happened has almost been like 180 is throughout my career and throughout finding spaces and cultivating spaces with women, cultivating like finally feeling like I was respected somewhere along the chain. I've done a complete 180 and now I'm really embracing femininity and trying to create space for that and seeing space of where feminine ideals or things that would usually be kind of rejected are actually valuable. And so I think what happened is when you've got a lot of male mentors, you might also sort of try to become them. And I have to say, in terms of like the leadership space, at least back then, and this has also evolved, is there was a very particular view of what a male mentor looked like, right? And a male, it's really interesting. Sorry, I'm very ADHD. I've got a very interesting reminder that just popped up on my phone or on my computer. Change limits. Anyway, back to where we were. We were talking about. Oh yes, and so coming through this now, I now find myself leaning into that femininity, and not only leaning into it, but also creating more spaces for that. And a part of like one of the key ways of doing that. So if you're a woman in the space, it can feel quite isolating because you only see one way of the world being, one way of it existing. I found surrounding myself with groups of women, WhatsApp groups, women engineering WhatsApp groups are like my go-to. I think I'm a part of 10 different ones with different groups of people, and they're not just from South Africa. I'd say like if you've got an opportunity, if you can find them, like just create as many as possible. So I'm part of some that are like more based in San Francisco and some more in the UK and some Pan-African women's groups. And we have various kinds of discussions. It's a great place, it's a great space to be able to talk about the struggles and kind of reaffirm. I think a lot of the time, kind of being a woman in the space, you'd be like, oh no, I'm being treated this way, and that's fine. That's just the way it is. That's just the way the system is. And the sort of treatment I'm talking about is like, I've had clients come after me, inviting me out on dates, and it's a client and you're in this really weird power dynamic and they want to take you out and they want to take you on holiday with them, and you've got to be like, no, you got to we kind of joke around it, and you're like, haha, that's really funny, and instead of just saying, listen, this is unacceptable, like you can't do that. And I kind of made it go away, and I only self-reflecting on it like a couple of years later, I was like, that wasn't okay. I should have just said, no, that's inappropriate, but you feel you can't because it's a client. And I think I was also quite lucky. It's also good to be surrounded by like male allies. So there have been number of cases where it was clients or who would treat me differently, and my male allies, in this case it's and always has been, and this is why I think I was in a good space to succeed. My bosses are very feminist. They would immediately be like, listen, stop that, apologize now, like how dare you. And I having that kind of support, having that sort of male allyship meant that even if I wasn't sure that I had the power to speak up, having people around me who felt comfortable doing that really, really, really helped. So that's, yeah, I don't know how long I've been talking for Taryn. I can talk more. I've got so many things written down.
So Jade, we had 15 minutes for your chat. So, and we've only got 2 questions at this point. I'm sure a few more will come in. So you've got a few more minutes if you want to share 1 or 2 more things with us, or we can head straight into your Q&A. What would you like to do?
I don't mind. I'm happy to take the Q&A, but I also have a lot of stuff. I'll let that guide the rest of my discussion.
Okay. Let's head off to the questions then. The first one is, did you ever build the robot friend? And if so, what did you call it? And if not, when?
If not, when? I have not built the robot friend. If I had to build the robot friend, what would I call it? I don't know. Kind of, my brain automatically wants to like pick on an existing sci-fi robot, but I think I'd like to invent my own. I'll have to think about what I'd call it. And in terms of when, we need to first actually create AI that actually works right now. Right now, machine learning is not it. So I won't create it yet until we have some big advances in the field.
Okay, thank you for that. The next one we have here is, who is your shero?
My shero. I don't know. I think that's a good point. In that, you know, there aren't many female heroes around, and I think I probably looked a little bit into science fiction and found more, you know, people I like admired more in that space. So if I'm looking at something like Star Trek was really good at female representation. So I really liked some of the lieutenants from Deep Space Nine. They were super cool, as well as Starbuck from Battlestar Galactica. I thought they were awesome. And I guess kind of sheroes these days would be probably Nieleng Morosi. She's a Google brain. She used to be at CSIR, and she's just one of the most magnificent humans I think I have ever met. So she's definitely one of my sheroes. She's just kind of she's got the epitome of what we'd call like I would refer to as a feminine leadership style that is just so warm and welcoming and you know, supportive. I think she's I would say Nieleng Morosi is probably one of my sheroes. Actually, I could go on. As soon as we get deep, the list gets very long.
I think we'll take that. Thank you. So we have a question from James Vodden. Have you seen a notable shift within the past few years around empowerment of women in tech?
Yes. And I think there are many ways. There've been some good attempts and there've been some bad attempts. I think a lot of people treat diversity as a performance diversity, right? And it's, you know, it's about what actually matters is not the performance. What matters is like internal structural change. It's, you know, ensuring that you have proper maternity leave. It's, you know, a culture of, you know, when a woman gets spoken over for other people around saying, hey, hold on, you know, let them speak. It's a culture of support from the top that when there's a harassment case, you know, or something small, like the company just has zero tolerance on it. And so I've definitely seen a shift in that. And what I've also seen is kind of these creation of these women networks. And I think they've been very empowering and sharing experiences and saying, I'm not sure if this was okay. Like, I don't want to bring it up. What do you guys think? I think that's been, I've seen a lot of that. And I think that's fantastic because I think that's how we spur the change.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Then we have one from someone who's anonymous. What advice would you have for men who want to be better allies in the workplace?
So this is a very easy one. Be cognizant of how women are being treated in your team, and it'll be very subtle things. If you see someone in your team being spoken over, or even if you do it yourself, but if you see them being spoken over, say, hold on, you should, like that's, please allow them to speak, or like give them that opportunity, stop the conversation, be like, oh, we should go back to Jade because she was trying to say something. If you see someone taking a woman's idea, say, hey, no, like you should give credit, where to them. So just being louder on their side. Often they don't feel comfortable speaking up because they're the only woman in the room. Often if they do speak up, they get told that they're being difficult. So being a male in that situation, being a male ally, and just saying that is great. For example, I was once in a conversation with someone. I had one of my colleagues next to me, and I think the conversation was, I haven't met, I think he said, I haven't met many, I've heard, I haven't met many women in tech, and all the women in tech I've met haven't been very good at their job. I heard you're quite good. And the guy standing, I was just like, so I'm sorry. And my colleague next to me turned around and said, that's the biggest load of nonsense I've ever heard. Like, what are you talking about? And he basically just like took this guy down. Whereas I was just like, I don't know what to do in this situation. Having a male ally indicate that this was not okay really helped. And I've been in lots of situations like that, where having allies around, having people saying, listen, you need to stop that, has been very helpful. And then it kind of validates you. So next time, I might feel okay speaking up because someone else did. So that's my recommendation there.
Super, thank you for that. I think, Lucky, you had something very similar, or a similar question for Jade, which I think that she's answered, in as much as yours was advice for allies. What should we be doing to create a safe space for women in our industry? And I believe that we've covered that, so we'll move on from there. Question from Nick. What has been your biggest struggles?
My biggest struggles. My biggest struggles as a woman, or
as a
just
woman,
generally?
I'm guessing it would be a woman given the context.
Yeah. So I think for me, my biggest struggles have been kind of I was mimicking. Because I guess the tech bro culture, I started mimicking that. And there's a great story kind of as I was transitioning from being a junior into like an intermediate and into a senior, where I saw how people were treating their juniors, and they'd have this kind of tech bro make fun of each other kind of thing. And I was working with a very, very bright and very kind junior, and he was still one of the best developers I think I've ever met. And he did one thing wrong or something. So he's one of the best developers, and then he couldn't write HTML or something. So I made a joke about it in the kind of the tech bro manner of like, this is what we do. And I walked away and I was like, that didn't feel right. That wasn't me. Why was I doing that? And he actually approached me. He said, listen, like, I don't know why that was necessary. Like, you don't need to do that. You don't need to treat people that way. He actually said he is one of the reasons that I started to embrace a different style of leadership, was because he eventually said, you don't have to lead the way the other people do. You don't have to have this tech bro culture. That's not you. So I think a lot of my struggles were kind of learning that I'd done that. I don't think I'd known. So that was one of the biggest struggles, I would say, is that just kind of just not tearing myself away, but really seeing how I'd become part of the problem.
Okay.
And in that way, there's that. And then on the other side, also, there's a little bit of the dichotomy. Sorry, I go going back. This dichotomy of like, if I do lead like a man, if I would say something sternly, I get that people turn around and say, "Oh no, that's you're being a bitch," but they'd never say that to a man. So that was the other bit that was very frustrating. So yeah, now I just don't lead that way at all.
Super. Okay. From Anonymous, what are you most proud of in your career this far?
Most proud of. So I'm most proud of with Masakane, which is this initiative that we founded. Our goal was to create I wanted to publish this research paper with 50 authors from like the African continent, because you typically go to these conferences and they've got, you know, people from all around the world, and like they usually put these maps up to look at, look at the diversity of all the people from around that have published in this conference, and you'll just see this big gap of Africa. And so I want to just change that by saying, here's one paper, there's 50 authors, we're doing research collaboratively, we're going to do this. And we wrote the paper and we got it published. And then we won an award for that paper from it was the last year's Wikimedia Research Paper of the Year award. And so that paper was such a representation of the values I wanted to see in the tech industry and in the AI industry, which was this collaborative like nature, and that's how we really going to solve like the problems that tech faces. And then we had such a struggle to get it published because of the way the world was, and then to come back and have Jimmy Wales award us like this award was insane. So that is definitely, that paper and that community that we've built is definitely the thing I'm most proud of.
Wow, congratulations. Sounds fantastic. Jade, another question here. You mentioned how you saw yourself losing your femininity because of adapting to tech bro culture. Why do you think it's important for women in tech to not lose their femininity and in turn embrace it?
So I think it's a personal choice. If people are happy in the tech bro culture, that's fine. But I realized I wasn't. I think my world had been limited in a certain way. I was discouraged from, like, I felt internally like I didn't like pink. I didn't like glitter. I didn't like being silly and just the I kind of pushed myself away from dressing a certain way. Even though I liked dressing that way. And I found for me it was a part of my personality that I wasn't exploring. And so, just opening myself up to even being able to explore being more feminine in the workplace, in research, wherever that might be, it brought me joy. I think that's maybe it won't bring everyone joy. For me, it definitely did. And I think, I would say everyone should embrace their feminine side, including men, because I think it's also there's joy in that.
Super. Okay, so we've got 4 questions left as we've run out of time. So I'm going to pose them to you and we'll try and move through them as quickly as we can. Do you have a dream project that you would want to work on?
Dream project, I think I'm working on it. So Masakane is the dream project I'm working on. So finding a way to do natural language processing for African languages is my dream project. I think the only one that might be more similarly dreamy would be to work in civic tech, civic thought, so to work on ways for bridging kind of doing governance better in society, so that people actually get, there's basically bridging a relationship between like people and government. I think would be a really interesting, fantastic project that I might do one day. But for now, I think working on Masakane is really the dream project. It's many projects, but it's definitely a thing that keeps me going.
Awesome. This is from Nick van der Schyff. What do you think is the best approach to forming female support groups and finding male allies?
The best approach to forming females. It's a good question. I'm trying to reflect back on how those happened. It's so typically a lot of it for me was just, it always starts with like just creating. It's a small effort. You create the WhatsApp group, you create the Slack channel, you create the whatever it is, and that's pretty much all it is. And then ensure that you are inviting people, like as women join the company, they get invited to these spaces. I think that's really, yeah, I think that's one way of approaching it. And I think from there, it carries itself. We used to organize, so the groups that I have are also people that I organize events with or write papers with, and like the discussions in those groups are so wholesome. So I'd say you just, I don't know if there's a best approach. You just create the group, and then it goes from there. Finding male allies. I think the nice thing about male allies is I think there are a lot of them around that just don't seem to know what to do. So if you're feeling brave enough, it's to be like, hey, listen, next time I'd love it if you did X, Y, Z in that scenario. I think most people are on the side of supporting women in tech and be like, yeah, you're right. And I think it feels like male allies are scarce, but they're not actually. Most people do want to help and just need some guidance.
Okay. I think we may have covered these next two questions, but I'm going to ask them simultaneously. What do you think needs to happen to us to equalize the male-dominated reality of our industry, and how do we drive balance?
We need a cultural shift that becomes more inclusive. I think it's time is what we really need. I think many of the forces are there, and I do think there needs to be a little bit of self-reflection from organizations on how better they could be, like what could they do structurally, what can they do culturally to be better. And I think that's a good start. I think a lot of people talk about a pipeline issue. Sure, there's a pipeline issue. There are less women in tech, but what we're finding is that women who are in tech leave tech. So, and I've seen this time and time again, they're like, this is not my space. This doesn't feel like I can be happy here because of the way I'm being treated. I don't want to do this. I don't want to fight this. And I think, if we can solve that part of the process, and we'll start seeing more, sharers in the tech space. And from there, then little girls will have people to look up to. So I think that's sort of what needs to happen. Like the pipeline, sure, we got to sort the pipeline, but we need to fix the problem once you're there. There's, really interesting conversations where people, you want to encourage women in tech, and you want to say, come to tech, it's great, but also don't come here because we still got a bunch of stuff we need to sort out. And so if we sort that out, then we can at least get more women and actually welcome them better.
Absolutely. Okay, Jade, well, we've run out of time. Thank you really so much for putting some time aside, especially on your holiday and while you're learning to do your snowboarding. I wish you all the best with that. I'm quite jealous. Skiing's one of my most favorite things to do. And just from my side, you really are a true example of what anyone can achieve when you put your mind to it, and guard and get it, regardless of your gender. So well done and thank you.
Thank you for having me and for allowing me to talk nonsense for half an hour. It was fun.
Enjoy the rest of your time there.
Will do. Bye, everyone.
Cheers, everybody.
Thanks for the questions.
Ciao, ciao.